Oh, I know that sound. It's time for the Beer News Report. Hi, and welcome to the Beer News Report. Cheers. Well, I'm finally on the last Sunhari beer. This one is peach flavored. None of these I care for, but I tell you what, I have been cutting them with sparkling waters like I did last time, and it's actually working pretty good. I actually kind of like it. It's not bad. It's sort of like a wine spritzer, right? So if you're into that type of drink, this one's all right. But if you're just into beer, this tastes nothing like any beer I've ever had. So it's okay with as a spritzer, but as a beer, I'm gonna say no. Cheers. Now, the United States is doing good against the COVID virus by getting out the vaccine as soon as possible. Other countries like India have been hit hard with a huge second wave, the biggest one in the world. And Brazil is still getting pounded as they haven't really got the vaccine out effectively. So this show is going to talk about COVID variants that have come out because of these big infections and using the vaccine to fight it. On a personal note, I did get the Pfizer vaccine, both shots, and I feel fine. I didn't really have any after effects, no fever, nothing tired. I actually worked out the day of the shot. So I hope you've been vaccinated using any one of the vaccines out there, even the J&J one. I just want to fight COVID, right? Here's to herd immunity. Cheers. So the United States, under President Trump, started a program called Operation Warp Speed. They gave millions and millions of dollars to pharmaceutical companies so they could do research and develop a vaccine for the COVID virus. To date, there are 4 vaccines available. That's the Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and AstraZeneca. As of now, the AstraZeneca vaccine has not been approved by the FDA, so it's not in use in the United States, but it is being used in other parts of the world. The Pfizer and Moderna vaccine use messenger RNA technology to make someone protected against the COVID virus. I've already talked about this in my show called The COVID Dilemma. Please check it out. The Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine use adenovector technology to protect someone from the virus. Also, they use DNA from the virus, which instructs the body to build spikes seen on the coronavirus. Because Johnson & Johnson used DNA, its vaccine is a lot more stable and thus doesn't have to be kept frozen. But why is that? Well, let me try to explain. If you had to climb up onto your roof, and you had to pick a ladder, which ladder would be more stable? One that has 1 support and steps on the side, or one that has 2 supports and steps in the middle? Well, it's a ladder with 2 supports. Well, that's the difference between DNA and messenger RNA. Messenger RNA has 1 genetic strand with information dangling from it, and DNA has 2 strands with information in the middle. And we all know 2 strands are better than 1. Cheers. Now, I said Johnson & Johnson uses adenovector technology, but what is that? It's just a fancy way of saying that they deliver the corona vaccine spike DNA to the body without causing illness. The adenovirus is what normally causes the common cold, and researchers have modified it so that it doesn't cause illness, but since everyone has had the common cold, our body knows what to do with this virus. So now you snip off a piece of the coronavirus DNA, the part that tells you to build a spike on the virus shell, and you attach that DNA to the adenovirus. Does this really work? Yes, they've made the vaccine for Ebola using the same technology. And they're also trying to make a vaccine for HIV and Zika using this technology. So what happens when you get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Well, the virus does what Mother Nature designed it to do, which is to go into the cell, take over its DNA and replicate itself. But again, the researchers have turned off the replication process. So when the virus enters a cell, it takes over the DNA, but the only working DNA in the virus is what researchers have put in there, and that's the corona spike DNA. So now the cell reads the spike DNA and starts producing spikes of the coronavirus. Once the spikes are made, our body figures out that it's a foreign body and attacks it with antibodies. So why do we only need 1 shot with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Because they use DNA and not messenger RNA. And DNA is a lot more stable. It stays in our body longer and it gives us more time to build up our defenses. It's just another path to the same objective. Cheers. Now let's talk about the different variants of the coronavirus. How do we even get variants? When you're constantly replicating, otherwise known as making copies of yourself, defects can occur in the process. Now let me try to explain this. Take a bunch of dice. Each die represents the genetic code on the virus DNA. Now, when you replicate, you're rolling the dice. The virus wants some combination that'll make it stronger, but it can't do it by itself. It needs luck. Most of the time, the rolls of the virus are weaker or don't even work, and that one that replicated that doesn't work, it just dies. But if the virus rolls enough, then the right combination happens and the virus gets stronger. For example, if you roll a dice and they all come up even, then the virus gets a little stronger. If you keep rolling and they all come up 4s and 6s, then the virus gets even stronger. And finally, if you keep rolling and they all come up 6s, the virus is super strong and is highly infectious. And that's how variants get formed. Our body does this too. We are constantly replicating ourselves, and when defects happen, our DNA attacks and removes it. But as we get older, the defects start to overwhelm the body. Our hair turns gray, we start getting age spots, and for some reason, just looking at food makes us gain weight. I don't think it's because we drink beer. Cheers. By now you've heard of some of the stronger variants, like the UK variant called B117. It's more contagious than the original COVID virus. But then there's the Brazilian variant, that's called P1, and California has 2 variants called B1427 and B1429. But why do these countries in California have these variants? Because each one had a major outbreak. Remember, a major outbreak is like rolling the dice thousands and thousands of times. Early in the pandemic, the UK and Brazil had major outbreaks. And if you remember, for a while, California was the COVID center for the United States. When you have major outbreaks, a lot of replication is happening, and that allows for a lot of combinations, which eventually leads to one success or stronger variant. It's just the luck of the roll. Now, where's the current outbreak happening? It's India. India's had so many infections that they now have a triple mutation variant of the COVID virus. But why didn't that happen to the United States? We were having 350,000 infections per day too. Well, there's 2 reasons for that. 1, the United States is about 3 times the area of India. And 2, India has about 4 times as many people as the United States. So if you take those 2 combinations, 3 times the area and 4 times the people, it means that India has got it 12 times as bad as the United States, potentially. We do have the vaccine, and if we can get it to them in large enough quantities, we should be able to quell the infection surge. All right, cheers. Now you may be asking yourself, with all the millions of infections that have happened, and we only have a dozen variants, that's not too bad. That's like 1 in 100 million, seemingly. But we only hear about the big infections. Look at this chart from the CDC. It shows all the main variants that they're tracking and which ones are the strongest. But if you notice at the bottom, that variant is called Other, and it has a little asterisk by it. If you read below the chart where the asterisk is, you'll see that Others are variants where the infections are less than 2% of the population. And there's over 200 of them. If you check the date at the top, you'll see that this is of March 2021. So we know India has produced a new variant. Brazil hasn't gotten their infection rate down, so maybe another variant will happen there. And as for the U.S., well, Michigan is the new center for the COVID virus. And if they don't get their infections down, I would expect a new variant to happen in Michigan. Luckily, the vaccines are working against these new variants. Cheers. Finally, what can we do to stop the variants from happening? We need to get to herd immunity, which the CDC estimates to be between 70 and 80% of the population vaccinated. Currently, vaccinations in the U.S. are slowing down. We peaked at over 4 million vaccinations per day, but now we're just over 2 million vaccinations. And we're around 50% as of this filming, which is not enough for herd immunity. So as long as there are pockets of unvaccinated people, the virus has a chance to infect and possibly mutate into a more deadly variant. Now, I've been vaccinated. As I said, I got the Pfizer vaccine, but I would have taken any of them, including the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I actually know someone who got the J&J vaccine, and he's doing fine. Also, summertime is coming. That usually takes a punch out of the virus. Time will tell. But it's on us to stay vigilant. I know you don't want to hear this, but until we get to herd immunity, we still got to keep social distancing. Try to keep your mask on unless you know everyone around you is vaccinated. And if possible, try to do things outside, right? The fresh air and the breeze keeps the virus from infecting people. All right? Cheers. Well, as you can see, my beer's almost empty, and that means we're at the end of the show. If you want to contact me, I can be reached at this email address. I hope you liked it and had a good time watching it. If you did, please click that like button. Of course, if you want to get notified of a new show, you click that subscribe button and then the bell icon next to it, and that'll notify you when a new show's been posted. Until then, keep your beer cold and yours high. Cheers.